Mike Andrews thought he had the perfect life. His wife Heather was gorgeous, smart, and loved him, he thought, unconditionally. They met in college when they were both very busy studying. He wanted to be an engineer and she wanted to be a lawyer. They met quite by chance in one of the compulsory classes outside the stream. It was some sort of creative writing, and since she was an Anderson and he was an Andrews, they were paired up. Heather was a total babe, and Mike, well, he wasn't ugly, but it didn't matter. They had a lot of fun in class, laughing and joking throughout the class. It was all a great release after the stressful regular classes. They were having such a good time in class that they started dating outside of class, and it became their escape from stress, laughter, fun, and lots of great sex. Yeah, sex. About halfway through the course, they decided to take Friday night off. They went out to dinner and a movie to take their minds off reality for a little while. They had such a good time together that night that when Mike walked her home after the movie, Heather didn't just thank him and say goodnight, but gave him a hot kiss. This led to more kisses, and the next moment Mike woke up in Heather's bed. This relationship continued after the course ended. Things were going so well that the next semester they became exclusive. Not that it was weighing heavily on either of them. They didn't have time for anyone or anything else. They both wanted to graduate at the top of their class, and the relief they brought to each other helped them in their studies. Eventually, they brought each other home to meet their parents. Heather visited Mike's parents for Thanksgiving, and Mike visited Heather's parents for Easter. For Christmas, they decided to stay on campus and have great sex together. The two passed the parental affinity test with flying colors. As they approached graduation, no one was surprised that Mike proposed, and Heather said yes. They both realized that they were doing well and it wasn't worth ruining their success. This was especially important because they both had high-stress jobs to start after school. Mike found a job with a construction firm that needed an engineer willing to work with his hands. Heather found a position at a large law firm, and they worked long hours building their careers. The rest of the time, they just had fun. They went on great vacations and had sex. Before they knew it, 3 years had passed and their wedding anniversary was approaching. Mike decided it was time to start thinking about starting a family. He wanted to start saving up for a house. The apartment they lived in wasn't bad, but a house, in his opinion, would be better for raising a family. They were both good at what they did and made a good living. Heather wasn't quite of the same opinion as Mike. They hadn't discussed, if you want to believe it, anything serious other than getting married. They hadn't even had a single serious argument. Heather was very happy with the way things were and didn't think they needed to change anything. Maybe sometime in the future she would agree with that. But things were great right now, so why mess it up? Mike's job started earlier than Heather's and ended earlier, so Mike went about his normal business of cooking dinner a few days before their anniversary, when he had experienced the shock of his life. His whole world was shattered with just a brief statement from his wife. When Heather came home from work, she announced that she was going on a date with someone else that Friday. It was so unbelievable that he asked her to repeat it, and she said, "Yes, I agreed to go on a date with this hot guy named Thaddeus for short, for Friday night." Mike was shocked. His whole world turned upside down, so when the shock passed, he asked the obvious questions. "Why did you do this to me? Are you unhappy with us? Did you cheat on me? Do you want a divorce?" A million thoughts raced through Mike's mind. What did he miss? What's going on? Who the hell was this Thad? Wasn't the sex still fantastic? Heather continued, "It's really quite simple, really. I get hit on all the time, you know that. They do it all the time, even when we're out together. In high school and college, I didn't have time to date. I worked too hard to get my degree. You've been pressuring me to settle down, buy a house, and start a family, so I decided to try dating a hot guy. I want to see what happens, and here's my chance. The hottest guy who's ever hit on me." Steve was stunned. "Wow, Heather, that really boosts my self-esteem. But what about me? Am I just going to be tossed aside like that?" "Come on, Mike. You look good. You know I love you. It's just a thing I want to experiment with." Mike was starting to get angry. "Well, Heather, I disagree. I don't think you should be going out with some random guys because it will irrevocably ruin our marriage." "Mike, I never knew you could be so dramatic. You're overreacting. It's just a date, nothing special." Mike tried to turn the conversation in another direction. "If it's no big deal, I'm going on a date too." At those words, Heather burst into laughter. You're going on a date. You can never get a date that fast. Women can get dates, even the ugly ones, but guys not so much. You can't get a date by Friday. Guys who aren't exactly sexy have to work at it for a long time. That's just the way it works. You're cute, but you're not sexy. Heather tried to contain her laughter, but to no avail. Mike couldn't think straight anymore. He was furious. How dare she laugh at him? Heather had shattered his world, first by saying she was going on a date and then by claiming he couldn't have a date. The laughter was a ton of salt being poured on a wound. He couldn't take it anymore, so instead of killing Heather, he realized he had to leave. Look, Heather, I'm so angry I can't think of anything right now. You caught me off guard and then laughed at me. I'm out of here. Mike left and went to his friend Scotty's house. Scotty was a good friend. They had been friends for years. They played video games and drank. Scotty never asked, and Mike never told him why he was there. He just went with it. That's how friends are. In the morning, Mike went to work hungover and a few minutes late, both of which were firsts. Gertrude, the office administrator, was surprised. She really liked Mike, and this was not like him at all, but she wouldn't talk about it. Mike's boss didn't even notice. He liked Mike's job so much that if he had noticed, he probably wouldn't have brought it up either. He came home that night, and he didn't feel like cooking dinner for the two of them like he usually did, but he did it anyway. Heather came home at the usual time and, of course, couldn't resist a sarcastic comment. Oh, you're back after that pout at Scotty's. You still think you can get a date for Friday? She said this with a wide grin on her face. Mike just stared at her, wondering who was this woman. What happened to their marriage? What happened to the fun and love they shared? He repeated that if she went on a date, it would ruin their marriage, and she said again that he was overreacting. Heather, I'm serious. This will lead to our end, and I'm going on a date this Friday if you don't cancel your date. He was prepared for that, but his wife's laughter still hurt him. Her next words were even more salt to the wound. Who are you going on a date with, Gertrude? She's 60, weighs 400 pounds, and is married to a guy who would kill you if you laid eyes on her. You don't have any other women you work with, so how are you going to meet her? If you're going to ask one of the guys at work out, I don't think it's going to go smoothly. That leaves Scotty. I think he has a girlfriend, so unless he swings both ways, he's screwed. Maybe an escort? Paying for a date doesn't count. Mike wondered if she realized that this laughter was eating away at his love for her like acid. Who was this woman? Did all the good times they'd spent together only mask the monster she really was? Mike was tired, physically and mentally very tired, so he went to bed. Heather lay down later and, for some reason, was surprised to find him asleep. Usually it was Mike who initiated their lovemaking, but he certainly wasn't going to do it this night. She was horny, but she wasn't going to wake him up to initiate anything. They usually had sex almost every day, and even more so on weekends, so this was unusual. On Wednesday, Heather came home from work, and Mike was texting furiously on his phone. They had a rule, no phones after work so they could focus on each other at dinner. Mike had already made dinner, but didn't even look up when she walked into the kitchen. Heather started to giggle. Mike was trying to make her jealous. Hey, Mike, no kiss today either? Are you too busy texting your girlfriend for Friday? Who did you talk into texting you? Gertrude? I hope her husband doesn't find out. Maybe it's Scotty. Are you totally steamed with him, Mike? The giggles turned to laughter as Heather finished her statement. Mike was so angry as she continued to make fun of him, and he realized that every time she made fun of him, his love for her was diminishing. He was really starting to dislike her. He looked up from the phone. Look, Heather, this has already gone too far. You're already ruining our marriage with this talk of a date on Friday, this talk about me and laughing at me. If you go along with this, I'm telling you right now, our marriage will be over. Heather finally stopped laughing. Oh no, it won't end. It's just a date. You'll get over it. It's no big deal. I told you, I just want to see what a date with a really hot guy is like. I've never done anything like this before, and I want to find out. If you weren't such a drama queen, you'd understand. Heather, you're special to me, and that's a big deal. We made a vow to each other. We have something special, and you're shitting all over it. With those words, he went upstairs and went to bed. The next day, Heather came home to an empty house. Shortly afterward, Mike came home with a new haircut. It was different from his usual haircut, the kind he wore when she first met him. Heather didn't like it as much as the way he kept his hair now, and she couldn't help herself. "Oh, you cut your hair short for your date." "Yeah." Heather made air quotes with her hands, and laughter erupted along with it. She continued, "I hope Scotty appreciates it when you sit there Friday night and play games with him with your new haircut." Mike went into the bedroom to change, and what he saw made him even angrier, if that was possible. When he returned to the kitchen, he saw a wide grin on Heather's face. "I noticed a Victoria's Secret bag on our dresser. Interesting. Saturday night you bought lingerie for just a date. Sounds like more than just a date to me. Also, what kind of underwear? I understand that on our honeymoon, when I asked you why there was no wedding lingerie, you said that, speaking of your body, if this set was wrapped in lingerie, it would be too much for me. You have never worn lingerie for me, so why does this date have to have it? If it's just a date, he won't even see it." Mike tried not to break down into a scream. After everything that had happened this week, it was a wonder he didn't. Heather either didn't notice or didn't care that Mike was about to explode. "I just thought it took something special for the hottest guy. It makes me feel sexier that way." Through clenched teeth, Mike spat out, "I can see again that you're doing wonders for my ego. It means too much to me to see you in your underwear, but some random guy is wearing underwear on what is supposedly just a date." "Listen carefully, Heather. This has already gone too far, way beyond enough. If you wear lingerie for me tonight and forget about this date for tomorrow, I'll try to put it behind you. At the very least, if you don't cancel the date, we'll be done with it." Heather laughed again. She, too, had misinterpreted his anger. "It's your fault you're so horny and want sex. I've been free all week. This is the longest period without sex in our marriage. It's all about you. I'm free. I don't need underwear for you." Mike looked at her long and hard. She was getting a little uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke up. "We will never have sex again if you go on this date on Friday." And with those words, he went back to bed alone. On Friday, Mike was again not cooking dinner when Heather came home from work. Although he didn't make dinner, he was getting ready for his date, and when Heather got home, she found him dressed and ready for his date. Mike looked really good in his new button-up shirt and new pants. In fact, he looked very sexy. Plus, she was already feeling pretty horny from the lack of intimacy all week. She was more than a little sexually frustrated and considered pouncing on him right there, but there was no way she was going to initiate sex. Moreover, she needed to get ready for her date. As Heather was getting ready, she thought there was something strange in their apartment, but she was too excited about her date to find out further. Mike left. Heather went on her date with Tad and met him at a nice restaurant. They had a nice dinner, and he was charming and engaging. When dinner was over, he invited Heather back to his apartment, and she accepted without hesitation. She was anticipating a terrific night of passion, but things turned out differently. When Heather arrived at Tad's apartment, he wasted no time in swinging the door open in front of her. He pushed her onto the back of the couch. "You must like an easygoing slut." To say Heather wasn't thrilled is to say nothing. She walked away, trying to maintain any semblance of self-respect she still had. It was still very early, so there was no way she was going home, so she went to her friend Michelle's house. Michelle's friend accepted her excuse that she and Mike had a fight, and they went to watch chick flicks and get drunk the rest of the night. The next day, Heather woke up late with a heavy hangover and went shopping with her friend Michelle. She was in no hurry to get home, so by the time she arrived, dinner was over. She expected to see a sulking Mike, but instead found an empty apartment. Now it dawned on her what she had missed when she was getting ready for her date. Mike's things were no longer in their apartment. His work boots weren't by the door, and his part of the dresser had been cleaned out. Heather chuckled to herself. Boy, he's really putting on a dramatic performance, but it won't be long before he'll be back with his tail tucked, begging me to take him back and forget all about it. Then she started wondering how his date went, and that, of course, made her laugh. She was beyond laughing the following Saturday when she still hadn't heard from Mike. Heather was tempted to call or text his parents or Scotty, but there was no way she would text or call anyone. It was all up to Mike whether he came back or texted or called. By the second week, she was starting to get frustrated. Heather couldn't figure out where he'd disappeared to. She drove by his work. His truck was parked there, but there was no sign of Mike. Heather was beginning to guess that she had screwed up, but not completely yet. They were good together, so why had one date become such a big deal? Now that she thought about it, she was having a hard time sorting herself out. It had been 2 weeks since the day she had come home and broke the news to him that she was going on a date, and at work she had been informed of the divorce. To say she was shocked, shaken to the core, was an understatement. She had thought Mike was a bit of a drama queen before, but now she realized he was overreacting. It was crazy. He was getting a divorce because she went on a date. There was a note from Mike that read, "If you have any questions about the divorce, please contact my attorney." What nerve on Mike's part. Heather thought about 2 years of dating in high school, 3 years of marriage, and the fact that I have to talk to his lawyer. Doesn't he know I could replace him in a heartbeat? Half the lawyers at her firm were already looking at her. Then she pictured Mike going on a date with Scotty, and she felt funny. He probably went on a date with Scotty, and now he wants to marry him and divorce me. What a joke, and she laughed even harder. Heather then threw the divorce papers in her briefcase, went home, and forgot about him. As if he was seriously going to get a divorce, it was all just a tactic to get her to come apologize, and that wasn't going to happen. After a month, Heather was disappointed. She had to make her own dinner, and she was alone in the condominium every night. Heather began to realize how much she liked Mike in her life, how good it felt to be with him. Slowly, she began to feel like she was taking him for granted. Heather thought that maybe she had even made a mistake. However, she had a hard time admitting it, so she arranged a chance meeting with Scotty. She needed information. Heather knew where Mike's friend Scotty hung out, and one day she happened to run into Scotty there. Scotty immediately wanted to run away as he was always intimidated by Heather. However, Heather cornered him and he said hello to her, to which she responded in kind. She then asked how he was doing, to which he replied that he was fine and asked her the same thing. Heather responded in the same way. An intimidated and uncomfortable Scotty knew why Heather was in front of him, since he wasn't stupid and had heard the whole story from Mike. He also didn't want her trying to get information out of him. In his opinion, she should have been crawling naked over broken glass and begging Mike to forgive her for being such an asshole. Heather was at a loss as to what to say next. All her lawyerly skills didn't help her in this situation. Eventually, the pregnant silence caught up with Scotty, and he exclaimed, "Okay, cut the crap. You're looking for Mike, and you think I'm going to tell you what you want to know. Fuck you. He loved you like crazy, and you decided to break his heart, make fun of his love, and ruin your marriage." Heather was taken aback by the venom in Scotty's voice, but didn't get the implication that he wasn't going to help her. "Look, Scotty, we just had a little misunderstanding, that's all. If you just tell me how to get in touch with him, it'll all be sorted out." Heather had always been nice enough to Scotty. She was a real babe, the object of his fantasies, and he never wished her harm because he liked Mike. So Scotty always just went along with everything she said or did. But now that he knew she was actually a self-centered bitch who didn't really care about Mike or her wedding vows to him, Scotty felt free to speak his mind. "Heather, it's no coincidence that you ran into me today, so-called. You're looking for information about Mike, and I don't have any information for you about Mike. You had the best of everything with a guy who adored you, and you decided that some random hot guy was better than what you had. He warned you, but you laughed at him and moved on anyway. And now you're surprised he's divorcing you? Just let him go and have fun with your hot guys." Then he squeezed past her and walked away. Heather was taken aback by his words and decided that Scotty just wanted to get in her panties and was an idiot. Heather needed to talk to someone, but who? She didn't want to tell her friend Michelle what really happened because Michelle had once told Heather that she wished she could find a guy like Mike. She also couldn't talk to her parents because they had a better opinion of Mike. That's when she decided to do nothing. After 3 months of procrastination, she received a subpoena. At this point, she consulted an attorney from her firm who specialized in divorce. After explaining her situation, she was advised to agree to the divorce. Heather was reluctant to do so, but as the attorney began to ask questions, it finally came to her attention. "Have you had any contact with your husband since he left?" "No." "Have you continued an extramarital relationship with Thad or anyone else?" "With Thad, no, he was a selfish asshole, but a girl has needs." "Do you honestly think your husband wants to reconcile?" Heather wasn't sure. She was beginning to feel like she had ruined a good thing. However, she was sure that if she talked to Mike, things would work out. So she asked to see Mike, and then agreed to the divorce. The divorce lawyer couldn't believe that this was the same Heather that other junior lawyers said was on the prowl. She had a silly fool in front of her. There was no way her husband Mike was coming back, dating or not. She couldn't believe Heather didn't realize that. Mike agreed, and they met at Mike's attorney's office. Heather thought Mike looked good. Mike thought Heather looked a little haggard. Heather hadn't been sleeping well and had lost a little weight. Plus, she was very upset about the whole situation, but still didn't understand anything. So after the pleasantries, when Mike sat down with her in the conference room, she went on the offensive. "So, what the hell is going on? I went on one little date, and you made a big scandal, and now you're filing for divorce." Mike sighed heavily. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. She just didn't understand. "I warned you, Heather, that this would ruin our marriage. Was your little date so insignificant that you didn't sleep with him? Did he like your Victoria's Secret stuff that you would never wear for me? I'm sure you had tons of fun with Thad and all the other hot guys you slept with, flaunting them. You belittled me, bullied me, treated me like garbage, and I was supposedly the man you loved? I think you're just a selfish, uncaring bitch, and our marriage was a farce. It was all about you, about what you wanted and what you could have. So despite what you think, I had a date that Friday. The date went great, and now I am setting a date to marry her right after our divorce is finalized. Just agree to the divorce and set me free." Mike rose from his chair and walked away. Heather couldn't believe it, really couldn't believe it. But maybe it was beginning to dawn on her that she had messed up. She had agreed to the divorce, and the divorce was simple, 50/50ths, and the apartment went to her. Epilogue. It took a few more years, a lot of bad dates with hot guys, a few failed relationships, and a couple of STDs before Heather finally sought professional help. In layman's terms, the diagnosis was simple. She needed to grow up. At that point, she had a lot of regrets, especially when it came to Mike, the man she'd driven away. Eventually, she would find another nice guy and treat him like gold. However, he wasn't Mike, and she took her stupidity to the grave. That Friday, Mike had a date. That Wednesday, he corresponded with her, not Gertrude or Scotty. Gertrude was a good judge of character and had disliked Heather from the start. So when Steve showed up for work on Tuesday, after the bomb had been dropped on him, not looking his best, she knew right away that something was wrong. Over lunch, she got the whole story out of him. She really liked Mike. He wasn't a snob like the other engineers they'd hired. Gertrude also had a daughter about his age, so she sent her daughter his number. It was with her that Mike corresponded that evening. Her name was Michaela, and Mike learned that she was about the same age as him, single, and had a good job. She also wasn't ugly like him, and her smile lit up the room. Most importantly, she would happily agree to go out with him that Friday. If Mike's wife didn't go on the date, she knew the date was off. However, from what her mom had told her, that was unlikely. Michaela thought Mike would be a great guy to go on a date with. That turned out to be true, and shortly after divorcing Heather, Mike married Michaela. They were a true love match, and they lived in a beautiful marriage with amazing sex for 44 years.